Granny squares are a classic crochet pattern, but did you know that you can make granny stitches in rows, not just in rounds? It's called granny stripes, and let me show you how. I like to start my granny stripes by making a row of single crochet. Because I find that that row works up a little bit more tightly than my rows of granny stripes, I'm going to size up one hook size. So while I'll be using a 5mm hook for most of this project, I'm going to go ahead and size up to a 5.5mm hook for the chain and for the first row of single crochet. Begin by chaining an increment of 3 plus 2 starting chains. For this tutorial, I've chained 18 plus my 2 starting chains makes 20. The amount that you will need to chain will depend on what size yarn you're using and how large you want your project. For example, if you're using a medium weight yarn like I am and you were making a baby blanket, I would chain approximately 101. If you were making a throw size blanket, then you would be starting with about 200. Work a single crochet in the second chain from the hook and work a single crochet in all other chains until the end of your row. Now that I've worked a single crochet in each stitch, I'm going to remove my 5.5mm hook and switch to my 5mm hook for the remainder of this project. Begin row 2 by chaining 3 and then turn your work. We're going to work a double crochet in the very first stitch of this row. Then skip 2 chains and work 3 double crochets in the next stitch. This set of 3 double crochets is called a granny cluster. Once you've worked your granny cluster, skip 2 chains and work another cluster. Skip 2 chains, work another granny cluster, and continue to repeat that, skipping 2 chains, working a granny cluster until you only have 3 chains remaining. Once you've come to your last 3 chains, skip 2 chains and then work 2 double crochets into the last chain instead of a full granny cluster. Change colors if desired. To begin row 3 and all other odd rows, chain 2 and flip your work. Work a granny cluster in the first space in between clusters from the previous row. Again, a granny cluster means 3 double crochets. And then work a granny cluster into each space in between clusters from the previous round until you come to the end of your row. Once you've worked all of your clusters, you'll end this row by working a double crochet into the top of the starting chain from the previous row. Change colors if desired. To begin round 4 and all other even rows, chain 2 and flip your work. Work a double crochet into the very first stitch. On even rows, you'll start with a half cluster, which means this chain 3 and double crochet. Now you'll work a cluster in between the clusters from the previous row. So I'll work 3 double crochets in this first space. I'll work a cluster in the next space and all other spaces until I come to the end of my row. Once you've worked all of your clusters in between the clusters from the previous round, you'll end your row by working 2 double crochets into the top of the starting chain from the previous round. Repeat rows 3 and 4 until you've reached your desired length. And because I like to start this project with a row of single crochets, I like to end it with a row of single crochets as well. To do that, I just chain 1, flip my work, and then work a single crochet into the top of all granny clusters from the previous round. End your single crochet row by working a single crochet in the top of your starting chain from the previous round. Just a pro tip, if you're using an odd number of colors like I am, you do not have to cut and reattach your yarn each row. Just simply leave your yarn attached at the end of your row. Then when it's time for that color in rotation, grab the yarn, drag it up a little bit, and then use it for that next row. Do that for each color, and then you can add a border along the sides to hide the yarn.